This is the Leica 1 model camera, and it's affectionately known as the hockey stick model because of this little hockey stick thing that's on the side of the camera. It was built in between 1925 and 1931, and during that time they made approximately 70,000, just under 70,000 units. Now my camera has a 50 millimeter 3.5 Elmar lens, and to set the aperture you just move this little peg back and forth until you get to the proper aperture that you want. To take a picture, you want to pull the lens out and turn it until it's in its locked position, and then you would move this wheel here with this little knob, and it shows you your focusing distance on the side here. So right here, this little peg is showing you the distance that you have to your subject, and right there it's at about 4 feet or 5 feet. And then to put the lens back into the camera, you would just turn counterclockwise and push it back in. There is no rangefinder built into this camera. It was before rangefinders were built in, so they have this external rangefinder. Now mine isn't in really good condition, and it's very hard to turn the focusing dial, but it works like any rangefinder would, where you would look through the viewfinder and you have the two openings on this side that determine the distance and brings a vertical line into a straight line to where you can see the two different subjects into one line. And what this would do is this would actually fit onto the accessory shoe on the top of the camera, and then what you would do is you would turn the dial to the distance that you are, and right now it's at 5 feet. So then what I would have to do is I'd have to transfer that to the lens, and I would move it to 5 feet, set my aperture, and take my picture. Now let's take a look at what's on top of the camera, because this is where most of the settings are. We have our rewind knob, which rewinds the film back into the cassette. We have a small viewfinder because since it doesn't have a rangefinder, we would use this nothing more than just for composition. We have our accessory shoe, and looking at my serial number, my camera was actually built in 1929, so it's a little bit of a later model. The shutter speed dial is here, and I have shutter speeds that go from 1/500th of a second down to 1/20th of a second. There's also Z, which would be for time exposure, and now they say that B is what it would be. You have your film advance, which is your film advance winder, which is right here. And around that I have my frame counter, so I would set that when I load the film. Right now, here's your shutter release. When I would rewind the film after I shot the film, I would flip this dial up to the rewind position, and then I could rewind the film back into my cassette. Otherwise, you would just leave it in the A position for advance, and then you would advance your film to the next frame. That's really the camera. It's a very, very basic camera. It's a nice, simple camera, and it takes great pictures. So let me show you how to load the film into a Leica 1 camera. The first thing you have to do is you have to take the base plate off the camera, and you do so by just flipping up this handle and turning this bar open. You always have to take the base plate off of a Leica rangefinder camera to load film into it. And inside you'll see here's where your film will go. Here's your take-up spool. So I just want to set this aside, the body for aside. Now you can take out the take-up spool. What I always do is I want to just put the leader of the film into the take-up spool. Just want to slide that into there. And then we also have this channel that you can see is where your film is going to go, which is behind your shutter curtain. I always just put the camera back, and I always want to just drop the cassette into a film in. Make sure that the film is going in the channel there. Make sure that your take-up spool is going down. Just kind of press it down into the body right itself. And then to put the base plate on, there's always a little lip here, and on the base plate there's a little hole where your base plate fits into, and then you just lock it up. Before I wind to the first frame, I always want to take up the slack in my rewind knob, so when I do wind to the first frame, I'm watching to make sure that will turn and get to my first photo. And that's loading a Leica 1 camera.